Despite our many differences, and in the case of race, so many injustices, still, we shared a belief in patriotism. And when our wars were fought, we had this in common. So to see Americans' belief in the importance of religion, family, and patriotism going down so precipitously startled and worried me.
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonin, faith columnist and features writer for the Forum, author, and speaker. I met my guest today, Dr. Robert P. George, on Twitter, now X, but it was Twitter then, so that gives you an idea of the timing of our crossing. Later, I would find him on Facebook and be invited into a community there that he has started, sharing thoughts on a number of issues relating to the Christian church today, with a special heart for religious freedom issues and the interplay between culture and religion. What I admire so much about Dr. George is that he is both intellectual and charitable, both deeply probing and objective, while able to approach a situation from many perspectives. He lives in the world of academia, but understands what it's like to be in the world beyond those doors as well. Most of all, he's someone who cares about people and about beauty, truth, and goodness, and why those three are so important, along with why they're worth hanging on to, particularly in ways they are most fittingly conveyed to human beings through the church. Dr. George cares deeply about our country and society and the ways it seems to be imploding onto itself. He is in that way a prophet of sorts, and one intent on sending out a clarion call to help us keep from falling into an abyss of immorality and self-absorption. Enough said for now. Let's just jump into the heart of the interview, listening to what this learned man has to say about fidelity and why that word matters, and needs to matter even more as we walk into the fast approaching future. Well, welcome, Dr. George, to Matters of Soul Importance. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Roxanne. I'm really grateful to you for having me on the show.
Are you in Princeton at the moment?
I am. I'm in beautiful Princeton, New Jersey on a beautiful day.
Well, I know we talked about this. I don't expect you to remember, but years ago, decades ago, I was a nanny in Princeton. And so I haven't been back since, but I really loved it. Sometimes I dream about it. I have really fond memories of my time in Princeton. So I don't know that you've been to North Dakota, Fargo in particular. Have you?
I have indeed. Many years ago, I was invited by the Catholic bishop up there to come and give some lectures under the auspices of the diocese. And I had a wonderful visit. That was my one time, but I'd love to come back another time to North Dakota.
Well, that's nice to know. A lot of people that come here say that this was one of the few places they'd never visited. So I'm glad to know that you're familiar. Was it in the winter or summer?
No, fortunately, it was in the summer. I understand that the winters up there are pretty challenging.
They get a little brutal, but right now we're enjoying, hopefully you are as well, a beautiful spring day. And
we are indeed.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about fidelity. It's a word that you've kind of brought up into the fore in different conversations. And a couple of years ago, I'm in a Facebook group with you where you announced that you wanted to make June the month of Fidelity, Fidelity Month. And so I've been kind of following those conversations and chatter, and I've just been really intrigued with that word and why you chose that word. And so, but before we dive into that, that'll be the main part of our conversation today. I want to hear a little bit about you. I know that you are a professor at Princeton University, among many things, but why don't we go back a ways further into your childhood? Where are you from? What was your faith like growing up? What was your family makeup? Kind of the nuts and bolts, so we can kind of get into like who you are.
Well, I was born and brought up in West Virginia, in the heart of Appalachia. Both of my grandfathers were coal miners. Both were immigrants. My father's father was an immigrant from Syria, and my mother's father was an immigrant from southern Italy. As I say, they worked in the coal mines. My father's father worked in the mines and on the railroads for his entire life, and he died of lung disease, as many miners did in those days because of breathing in the coal dust. My maternal grandfather, after 20-something years in the mines, was able to save up enough money to get out of the mines, and he opened a little grocery business in the town of Star City, little village of Star City in Monongalia County, near where Morgantown is, where the State University is in West Virginia. And so he had a nice little business for the rest of his life. My parents met through mutual friends. They married. In those days, it was called a mixed marriage because my father, of course, was Eastern Orthodox, Antiochian Orthodox, and my mother, being from a Southern Catholic background, Southern Italian background, was Catholic. And in fact, they couldn't even have a mass at their wedding because it was considered a mixed marriage. That was really before the great rapprochement between the Orthodox and Catholic churches that really happened in the 1960s with the Second Vatican Council. As you probably know, these two traditions of faith, the Eastern Orthodox and the Catholic, recognize each other's priesthoods and recognize each other's sacraments. Catholics don't recognize the priesthood, for example, of the Anglicans or the Lutherans or anything like that, the Protestant denominations, but they do recognize the sacraments and the priesthood of the Eastern Orthodox churches. So today, of course, these faiths don't seem especially distant, but they seem distant in those days. It was beautiful having the two traditions in my family, the two Christian traditions, what the late and very great Pope John Paul II called the two lungs of the church, the Eastern and the Western churches. It was great having the two traditions because I was able to get something of the spirituality of both the East and the West in my religious formation. When we would, I mainly attended the Catholic Church because there was no Eastern Orthodox Church, certainly no Syrian Orthodox Church near us. There was a Greek Orthodox Church, but I noticed that the Syrians didn't go to the Greek Church. So we were brought up in the Catholic Church, but we would travel some distance for family events, weddings and baptisms or chrismations, as they call it in the Eastern tradition and so forth. For events on my father's side of the family, we'd travel up to Brownsville, up near Pittsburgh, to attend those. And so I got a sense of the Eastern tradition. I was especially struck by the beauty of the funerals in the Eastern traditions of faith, both the Eastern Catholic and the Eastern Rite Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox. They so powerfully evoke the resurrection. So that was something that had a big impact on me. Both my parents were very devout. My father really modeled Christian faith for his 5 sons. There were 5 children in the family, all boys. So we grew up with a very devout father, very loving father. He would, for example, say his night prayers on his knees at his bedside out loud. So we would hear him. It was a regular part of our growing up, hearing him saying his prayers, not only the formal prayers, but his petitionary prayers, his praying for his family and his praying for whatever his needs were, or for people that he knew and loved who were in need, or anything like that. I think especially for boys, I don't know what it's like growing up as a girl, of course, but for boys growing up with a father who was a man of profound, but very simple, in my father's case, very simple simple faith, was a powerful thing. Neither of my parents were very well educated. Both finished high school. Neither went to college. My father was drafted into World War II in October of 1944, before he even finished his senior year. In fact, he didn't attend a graduation. The school just sent his parents a diploma. He was drafted to go off and serve in Europe. He served in Normandy and Brittany. And then when he returned to the United States, he had that military experience and some good training. And there were new opportunities. Of course, the economy was booming then. And so he didn't end up in the coal mines, and as a result of that, I didn't end up in the coal mines. But he did not have the opportunity to go to college, and he very much wanted his sons, as did my mother, very much wanted their sons to go to college. So the five of us did end up going to college, and all of us then went on to graduate school. Four of us became lawyers. One is a businessman. All are faithful, very solid, devout Catholics.
I just think of that image of your father praying, and of course, I'm sure you're aware of the statistics of the power of a praying father, and how when we don't have that, that's where we see a lot of the fall off and a lot of young people leaving the faith. And it's not to say that mothers don't have any influence at all, but certainly it's a very humbling statistic that that the father is going to have, and even just that simple faith that, praying out loud. Like, there's something about the father as the leader and as the spiritual leader. And I think many families have been missing that. And I think that might be a part of our faith crisis, right now. So anyway, just something to point out. That's I'm kind of holding on to that beautiful image of your father, saying those prayers out loud, and how that formed you, and probably well before you realized, but that's beautiful. So
My father had what our evangelical friends, I think, would recognize as a very personal relationship with God.
Right.
If you didn't know what was going on, you just heard the voice coming out of my father's bedroom in the evening, you would ask yourself, gee, I wonder who he's talking to in there. It's like he was talking to another person who was right there in the room, another human person who was right there in the room. It was an unaffected, very informal way of talking. Seen the movie Fiddler on the Roof, the main character Tevye talks to God just as he would talk to another human, to a human person, and that was very much what my father was like. And I suppose that those data that you were just talking about, where people tend to fall away from the faith if they don't have a strong and faithful father, that very well might be because our image and understanding of God as fathers probably shaped by our relationship with our own fathers. Our fathers help us to form an image of God, and so I think having a father like the father I had was very much to my spiritual advantage there, because I had a loving, unconditionally loving father, a strong father, and a faithful father, and an upright, a righteous father, just a fine man in every way. So it's easy for me to form an image of a loving, strong, generous, righteous God.
Right. Interestingly, my father went on kind of a prodigal journey. He was actually going to be a priest. His mom died when he was 19. He was had just entered the seminary, and there was a lot of addiction in their family, and he kind of ended up. He was also, it was a family that really valued education quite a bit too. He was a teacher, but kind of went on a road of leaving God behind. But interestingly, he always, even when he didn't feel worthy, I think, of God's love, and felt shame because of the addiction and whatever, like as I was going off to college, one of the last things I remember my parents saying to me was my dad saying, make sure you go to the Newman Center. And there was a deep faith under there, but it just at the time, yeah. And so I've come back to that moment, because even though my dad was broken at the time and still was trying to find his way back to God, which he did eventually, he did come back to the church before he died. Yes, it was 35 years away, and he had that second chance, and it was he died a holy death. So lots to take from there, but his telling me to go to the Newman Center, like I did, and it was in a college. It was a public university that, had I not had that anchor, I don't know that I would be talking to you right now. It was that Newman Center anchor that kept me grounded, and I have my dad to thank for that, even though he wasn't a vessel at the time that could, he was not coming to Mass with us. We were. My mom was the spiritual director, but there was something underneath that current, thankfully, and I saw it, I knew it, and somehow God graced me with the ability to clasp onto it. So dads do matter, even the broken ones. So
yeah, the Lord works in mysterious ways. It's really true. The Lord works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform.
Yeah. But I do hear kind of in that story the naysayers and the people that would say, the patriarchy, right? We don't need that kind of God. What if God really isn't a man? Do you want to just address that so we can kind of get that out of the way? Because I think that's something that I'm hearing the echoing of as you're telling your story, which is so beautiful. But there are people obviously with broken relationships too. How do we get around that? Because we do find in our Bible, our Father. I don't have a problem with that. And I think even if you had a broken father, all the more reason to search for a pure father, But can you just, I know this wasn't anticipated, but I'd like you to address kind of that
Yeah.
idea that the patriarchy, because I think it really is connected to our question about fidelity.
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. I deeply honor and respect women. I deeply honored and respected my wonderful mother. She just died a few months ago at age 92. About a year after my father died at age 98, I had them for a wonderful long time, and they had wonderful lives. But I deeply respected and honored my mother. I deeply respect and honor my wife. I deeply respect and honor my daughter. If you talk with my female colleagues, or if you talk with my students, I think you would hear them say that, well, in some cases, even though we disagree with him politically or disagree with him religiously, he's a person who treats women with dignity and respect and as his equals in dignity. Now, why do I do that? I do that because of my father. My father taught me to respect and honor women and to treat them as equals. My father taught me that women are not objects for sexual gratification. Women are not slaves to be ordered around. Women are bearers of the image and likeness of God, just as men are, as all human beings are. It was having that strong, faithful father who not only taught me these things about respect for women by precept, who also showed me by example. He always treated my mother with the most profound respect. He honored her. He honored her mother. He was very close to his mother-in-law. I noticed how he honored his own mother. He didn't have daughters, so I didn't see him, in relationship to sisters. But he had many women in various aspects of his professional life, for example, and of course his friends, especially the wives of his friends. He always treated women with the greatest honor and respect. That was not because he was a weak man. On the contrary, the opposite. It was because he was a strong man, a strong and self-confident man. Women were no threat to him. He didn't see them as a threat. Honoring their intellectual powers, honoring their wisdom and insight, respecting their right to have a role in decision making in the family, an honored, important role, to exercise authority. This was all just second nature, easy to my father. There was an event in my life. I was 12 years old. I've written about this. You could look it up. It was an article I published about it on National Review a few years ago. When I was 12 years old, we were living during a summer along a creek in the little Appalachian mountain town of Mount Morris, and there was a field between our little house and the neighbor's house. It was about maybe half or 3/4 of an acre between the two houses. And in the other house, the neighbor's house, lived a couple who fought all the time. They quarreled constantly. He was a paraplegic man in a wheelchair. He'd been injured in a work accident and permanently confined to a wheelchair. His wife and he would quarrel. He was a difficult man, I have to say. They would quarrel, and they would accuse each other of every terrible thing. He would accuse her of having affairs with men. And very often they'd shout and scream at each other. My parents tried to distract us from hearing what was going on, but there was no way that we couldn't hear what was going on and see what was going on. And often they'd have a shouting match. He'd accuse her of cheating on him. She'd rush out to her car and drive off in a huff. He'd shout after her. He would threaten to kill her. Then he would threaten to kill himself. And we got used to this because it happened several times over the course of every summer we were there. This one particular day, all that played out. She car. She drove off. He shouted after her. He threatened to kill her. He threatened to kill himself. And then it went quiet, as it always did after she was gone. And for 15 minutes, things seemed perfectly normal. Then my brothers and I heard a huge kaboom, a big explosion, and we looked, and the house was suddenly a ball of flame. That man had closed the windows and doors in his wheelchair, filled the house with gas from the stove, I guess, and then lit a match. And the house exploded in a massive flame. It wasn't one of these gradual fires that grows. It was just this, like a bomb going off. Yeah. The house is in a massive flame. At which point, my brother next in age to me, my brother Leonard, who would have been 10 at the time, the two of us, happened to be in that field between the two houses. We watched my father take off like a rocket, racing from our house across that field, disappearing into the neighbor's house and dragging that man who had been blown out of the wheelchair onto the floor. He was much bigger than my father. My father's about 5'8", maybe 170 pounds. This man, whose name was Donsel, was at least 6 feet tall and must have weighed something in the vicinity of 200 pounds. Dead weight, of course, because he himself couldn't move because he was a paraplegic. And my father dragged him out of that house. He raced into a burning building, a ball of flame, and dragged him out of the house. That was the kind of courage, the kind of strength that my father showed. Now, while this was going on, my mother was back at the house watching with her, the baby in her arms, 2-year-old baby in her arms, and the two middle boys, whose names were Kent and Keith, clinging to her, crying, clinging to her legs. I remember seeing all this. My mother was trying to call my brother Leonard and me back, but we were pretending not to hear her because we wanted to watch what was going on with my dad, and rushing into the burning building and everything. Now, when that happened, Roxanne, my mother and father didn't negotiate about who should run into the burning building.
Right.
Now,
yes.
my mother was a brave and strong woman. Had my father not been there, I have no doubt that my mother would have rushed into the building, who was 5'2" and maybe 130 or 125 pounds, would have rushed into that building and tried to rescue that man. She wouldn't have been able to. She probably would have died trying, but she would have done it. But since my father was there, they didn't stop to discuss, well, should you go or should I go?
Yeah.
And she understood that the best contribution she could make is to try to comfort and protect those children, while he would rush into the burning building and do his best. Wow. And thank God, successfully. A man was badly injured, obviously, and burned, but nevertheless, he rescued that man. Now, if you want to call that patriarchy, if you want to condemn that, fine. But I don't condemn that. And if that's patriarchy, I'm for it 100%. I have my goal. I just wish I could be half the man of courage and strength and principle that my father was. As I say, he was not an educated person. He was not a person who gained great status or reputation in the world. But boy, I strive every day to try to be like him. Now, my life has been very different. I've got degrees from Harvard. I've got 3 doctorates from Oxford. I've had all this recognition and won all these awards and all this stuff. None of that makes me half the man my father was. He is my hero and he is my role model.
Wow. What a powerful story. Thank you. Even though it's out there already, I appreciate that you shared it here. Right before you were sharing that, as you were talking, I was thinking, when we know who we are, when we know what our gifts are, and when we truly know who we are, in light of our faith and the Father, like when we know who our identity is fixed in Him, and we can grasp on to the things that make us unique, and each sex has different propensities. That doesn't mean, I think of you, dwelling in the life of academia, like you run into a lot of well-versed women and whose brains are on fire. We know that that's not what the distinguishing factor is. It's other aspects of us that are, just by our nature, women are designed to have children, and I think we want to erase all of that and make each other, equal, but we're not equal in in all of our gifts. We're equal in our dignity, and I think
That's exactly right.
yeah,
That's exactly right. And uh, some of my great intellectual heroes are women. The person I consider my intellectual and moral godmother, the great Mary Ann Glendon, professor of law at Harvard. My goodness, she's been a huge influence on me. The late philosopher Elizabeth Anscombe, the great Oxford and Cambridge philosopher, has been a profound influence on me. The late Jean Bethke Elshtain, Elizabeth Fox Genovese, both of whom were late in life converts to Catholicism. These were female intellectuals who've hugely influenced me, and I'm enormously grateful for the everything that I learned from them. In the case of Glendon and Elshtain and Fox Genovese, they were also personal friends. I knew Anscombe, but not terribly well. But I'm just so grateful for the witness of, and those women are every bit the intellectual equal of the greatest male intellectuals. So,
yeah,
what should be the problem? Recognizing talents of every sort, including
yeah.
intellectual talents where you can find them, whether they come in men or women. Men and women don't have to be in conflict about this stuff. That's silly.
Right. And I was thinking as you were naming those women, the women saints in our Catholic faith, those are some powerhouses in different ways, and intellectual as well as just spiritual, just that motherhood that they bring, but also
Absolutely right. I mean, I'm thinking of Saint Edith Stein.
yes, yes,
It's very special for me because, of course,
yeah.
she was not only a great saint who died in the Nazi camps due to her Jewish heritage, but she was also a great philosopher.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've studied her, and I was I've written half a book that didn't end up getting completed, but that's one of my life goals is to come back to Edith, because she just is so inspiring, of course, as a writer, as a there's just she just really, really articulated what we're talking about right now really well. But so really we're here today, though, to talk about fidelity, which it seems maybe like we've gotten off course, Dr. George, but I want to bring it back to that. I had mentioned earlier that a couple of years ago, you came up with an idea to bring fidelity back into the conversation. So what was it about fidelity that called to you? What was going on there? There's a backstory. share it.
There is indeed a backstory. So this was in February or March, early March of 2023, when I happened to read about a poll that the Wall Street Journal had done, trying to get a finger on the pulse of the American public and what people thought really mattered in life, what people thought we Americans thought is really important in life. And so this was a follow-up from polling that had been done over the years, asking the same questions so they could see how public opinion was moving or changing over these years. And the most recent one, just out, had some new findings, new data. So it showed that Americans' belief in the importance of religion had diminished significantly. People's belief in the importance of the family had diminished again significantly. People's belief in the importance of patriotism, loyalty to our nation, had decreased significantly. In fact, by just about every indicator, Americans' faith in the things that used to unite Americans across racial, ethnic, religious, other divides had diminished. The one thing, the importance of which in the minds of Americans seemed to have gone up, according to the poll, was on the importance of money. So I saw that and I said, oh, wait a minute. We're not going in a good direction here. We're going in a very bad direction, because after all, ask yourself, what are our principal sources of strength and unity as Americans? We're not like most people in most countries or most cultures over most of history. Our common bonds, our sources of unity and strength, are not in shared ethnicity. It's not in a shared historical culture. It's not in a shared religion. We're people of different races, different ethnicities, different religions, different cultural backgrounds. We can't draw our strength from those commonalities because we don't have them.
Mm-hmm.
No, the sources of our strength and unity, despite our differences of race, ethnicity, religion, culture, background, and so forth, are in things like a shared commitment to our nation's constitutional principles and shared commitments, despite our differences on so many things, including religious denominations, nevertheless, historically, our shared belief in God and the importance of being faithful to God, whether we're Jews or Christians, Protestants or Catholics. We've always in America shared a commitment to the importance of religious faith. Same with family. Doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Latino, Asian, Catholic, Protestant, Christian, Jewish. Doesn't matter. We still had, across all those divisions, a shared belief in the importance of family. And same with patriotism. Jews are equally patriotic with Christians. Protestants are equally patriotic with Catholics, historically. Blacks, whites, Asians, Latinos, despite our many differences, and in the case of race, so many injustices, still, we shared a belief in patriotism. And when our wars were fought, those who gave the last full measure of devotion on the battlefield, as Lincoln put it, were black and white, Asian, Native American Indian, Latino. We had this in common. So to see Americans' belief in the importance of religion, family, and patriotism going down so precipitously startled and worried me. So by the power vested in me and by absolutely no one, Roxanne, I went on my social media accounts and I declared the coming month of June to be Fidelity Month. And this would be a month when we would join together across the lines of race, across the lines of ethnicity, across the lines of religion, across the lines of culture, to reaffirm and reassert our belief in the importance of fidelity. Fidelity to God. Fidelity is just faithfulness, being faithful to God. Whether we come at God from a Christian point of view, a Jewish point of view, a Muslim point of view, that we're going to reaffirm our fidelity to God. We have this in common, despite our doctrinal differences. Number two, fidelity to spouses and families. And number three, fidelity to our country and communities. And again, fidelity just means being faithful. Let's be more faithful to God. Whether we're Jewish, Christian, Protestant, Catholic, Muslim, whatever we are, let's be better at it. Let's be more faithful to God. Number two, let's be more faithful to our spouses and families. Now, being faithful means more than just don't have affairs. Now, it's very important to not have extramarital affairs. That's the kind of baseline.
Right.
But a truly faithful husband is not just somebody who doesn't have affairs with other women. It's somebody who gives his spouse his love and attention, who honors her, who honors their children and cares for their children, who's not an absent dad, not an emotionally distant father, who's active in his family's life. Same with a mother, you know? And same on patriotism. Patriotism means more than just putting out the flag on the 4th of July. Let's be active citizens of our country. If we're not voting, let's remember that it's our obligation to vote to help sustain this grand experiment in democratic Republican governance. Let's be active in our communities. Let's serve as jurors and not try to get out of that when we're called to be jurors. Let's contribute to our communities in any ways that we can. Let's consider serving in a public office. It might be an appointed office or maybe running for an elected office. Let's just be more faithful citizens to this country. So that's what Fidelity Month is all about. And I was really gratified that when I proposed this idea, a number of my Facebook friends and Twitter followers took it up and began to spread it, and it got a little following. And my friends, Facebook friends, Deacon Michael Forrest and Deacon John Barry, helped me to organize things. It's completely a grassroots movement, Roxanne. There's no no central committee, no central planning. There's no
Yeah.
budget. Deacon John Barry, who is a wonderful digital artist, came up with a beautiful logo featuring the myrtle leaf created into a wreath, a myrtle wreath, which is historically, going all the way back into ancient times, a symbol of fidelity. And we invited people to use our logo, for free, of course, on their social media accounts during the month of June. And we encouraged people to encourage their own churches or get involved in their own churches or other community organizations to have a special speaker for Fidelity Month or an event for Fidelity Month. We encouraged our political leaders to make a declaration that May is Fidelity Month and to put out a proclamation on the importance of fidelity to God, fidelity to spouses and families, and fidelity to country and communities. And we just encourage people to think up their own ways of trying to promote these values. Again, the values that were once and can yet again be our principal sources of unity and strength.
I have so many questions. I'm going to start with, I hope will be an easy one. I'm not sure. You chose June, which is kind of interesting. What was the thought behind choosing June as Fidelity Month?
Well, I was only slightly a little concerned about choosing June because for those of us who are Catholic, June, of course, is the month that we specially dedicate ourselves to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So I didn't want to detract from that. On the other hand, when I thought about it, I thought, well, we got June coming up. We have time to plan for June. It's the month that comes right in the middle of the year. It's a month when you can still do outdoor things because it's not too hot in the more humid sections of the country, not yet too hot, and it's not cold anymore. When I thought about it, I thought, well, we Catholics can do two things at once. We can, within our own Catholic community, mark June as the month of the Sacred Heart, but we could join with our non-Catholic friends, our Protestant friends, our Jewish friends, friends from other traditions of faith, and friends who are not practicing any particular religion. We can join with them in honoring June as Fidelity Month. So at the end of the day, I just didn't see any conflict there, and I thought we should just go forward. There have been a few Catholics who've objected and said, well, no, you're really stepping on the month of the Sacred Heart. We should have Fidelity Month in a different month, but it's now established for June, and so I think we just need to go forward with June as Fidelity Month. As I say, we Catholics are capable of doing two things at once.
Absolutely. And I do have to ask the hardball question of, it is Pride Month to many too. So is that another competing factor, or where does that kind of sit with the month of June in your mind?
Well, that's not a month I celebrate because those are not values that I share. I have a very different view as a Catholic, but not just as a Catholic. I mean, I think there are good philosophical reasons for the Church's teaching as well as theological ones when it comes to issues of marriage and sexual morality. So I'm not someone who honors or recognizes June as Pride Month, but I don't regard that those who do recognize June as Pride Month, I don't regard them as having any more of a monopoly over a particular month than Catholics have a monopoly over June as the month of the Sacred Heart.
There's no competition.
There's no monopoly. Nobody gets a monopoly, right? It's a great month for doing outdoor events and ceremonies and things like that.
Absolutely,
they can do their thing. People who believe in the Pride values can do their thing, and those of us who believe in fidelity can do our thing. It's free country. Everybody can do whatever they want. We've got free speech. Thank God.
For now,
I like it that way. Anybody who disagrees with me, I want them to feel completely free to express their views and their values, and I want them to honor my freedom to express my views and my values. So I just don't see that there's a problem here.
Yeah, I do see that you're a bridge builder. And now that you've shared a little bit about your growing up, I kind of see where that maybe started with different faiths, but there was an enmeshment of the two faiths, but it was different. And so, and then of course being in academia too, like there's all sorts of different different minds and hearts that are coming together in that pool. That's one of the things I just have appreciated about following you on social media, is just to just in this day right now where there's so much division and everything, you seem to be someone who wants to bring people together. You want to bring
I believe in
everyone to
that.
the table. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe in that. I do a lot of work with my really beloved friend, my brother Cornel West. Now, Cornel West and I disagree about a lot of things. He is on the left wing politically. He's the honorary chairman of Democratic Socialists of America. And as you can imagine, Roxanne, I am not the honorary chairman of Democratic Socialists of America. So we
Thank
disagree
you.
about many things. And we certainly disagree about political issues and some important moral issues. And yet, for 20 years now, the two of us have been teaching together, promoting values that we do share, like the importance of civility, the importance of free speech, the importance of intellectual humility, the importance of courage, the importance of exposing students to the best that has been thought and said on competing sides of issues, the importance of avoiding anything that would resemble indoctrination in education or manipulation in education. So we, on the issues that where we share values, we try to promote those values, and on the issues on which we disagree, we try to model truly civil, constructive disagreement. If I may, could I plug our new book? Cornel West and I have a new book out
Absolutely.
called
Yes.
Truth Matters. The title is Truth Matters, and the subtitle is a dialogue on fruitful disagreement in an age of division. And that's really what Cornel and I are about. Working together on the values that we do share, and modeling fruitful disagreement where we do disagree.
That sounds wonderful. I want to get my hands on that book. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for plugging that. Well, I'm going to take a little break here and give us a chance to breathe. But on the other side, I want to ask you, as you laid out that concern that you have and how things started kind of falling away from who we are as Americans, I want to ask you, what do you think happened to cause that? So you seem to have a breadth of being able to see like widely more than some of us perhaps. And so I want to see if you can kind of answer that question. So we're going to take a little break here on Matters of Sole Importance, and we'll be right back after this pause.
Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
Welcome back to Matters of Sole Importance. I'm talking this morning with Dr. Robert P. George, and he is talking about the topic of fidelity, the word fidelity, and what that is and why we seem to be losing sight of it. So, Dr. George, can you kind of, on the other side of the break, I asked, like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Just so we can kind of get a feel for, like, the tide here and what we can do to stop it. So, what is your theory or a conjecture on how we found ourselves in this place? Is there anything that you can point to that sort of got the ball rolling for us losing our grasp on fidelity?
There are two factors that I would put special emphasis on. Any sound explanation would attend to many, many factors, but the two that I would want to emphasize are, one, the rise of secularism, the loss of religious faith and religious sensibilities, and then second, the breakdown of the family. Now, the first of those, and those are not unconnected, by the way, but the first of those did not start yesterday. Really, the origins of the development toward secularism and the rise of secularist ideologies takes us all the way back into the early modern period, the immediate post-Reformation period. But secularist ideologies have grown in power and influence. They are major competitors, have been since the mid-19th century. Such philosophies are, for example, Marxism, utilitarianism, some forms of nationalism in their most vicious guises there, fascism and Nazism, and then secular progressivism of the sort that gave us the eugenics movement in the early part of the 20th century and has given us the abortion movement and the sexual liberationist movement in the mid 20th century and now going into the 21st century. And then there's the breakdown of the family, which I think is connected precisely to those secularist ideologies and their influence. We're now in a situation in the West where the marriage rate has dramatically diminished. Out of wedlock childbearing is now considered normal and natural, and nothing even that raises an eyebrow or of any moral concern. Promiscuity, the sexual liberationist movement has kind of claimed the moral high ground. You can be canceled if you question any of its dogmas. So those are the two things, again, secularism, two related things, secularism and the collapse of the family, that I think have contributed the most to our current ills.
Mm-hmm. You, I could comment more on that, but I'm just going to let that be for now. But I want to zero in a little bit about religious freedom, because that is an important topic to you, and you keep mentioning that, and I agree that the moral degradation that we're experiencing has a lot to do with what we're talking about in terms of fidelity, right? So, what are your concerns right now, Dr. George, about religious freedom, and how? What are some particular things we need to be paying attention to so that we don't lose that? Because you talked a little bit ago about how it is a free country, and we can have those freedoms, but maybe they're slipping away. I don't know. When you think about religious freedom right now, what are your concerns?
Well, I served for 4 years in his two terms as chairman of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. And if we look at the question of religious freedom internationally, there are very, very many grave concerns. Something approaching 3/4 of the population of the world live under regimes that are seriously violating people's basic religious freedom. In many cases, people are persecuted for their faith in the harshest possible ways. Whether we're talking about Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, whether we're talking about the Uyghur Muslims in China, whether we're talking about Christians just about anywhere in the world. North Korea, obviously, China, in the Middle East, Africa. There are, countless people now who are living under religious persecution, sometimes at the hands of other religions. Christians who are persecuted by Muslims who are persecuted by Buddhists, and sometimes living under the persecution of atheistic or secularist regimes. The Chinese regime, a communist, secularist, atheist regime, persecuting Chinese Christians, Chinese Buddhists, Uyghur Muslims. You get the same result, although it comes from different sources. Here in the United States, I have long been concerned. These are less dramatic and tragic cases, but nevertheless, there are real issues, especially in the area of bioethics, where people's religious freedom rights are trampled when they're forced to participate in or fund or have some role in practices in the bioethics area that violate their moral and religious beliefs. We've had litigation in the United States over questions like, can an order of Catholic nuns be required to provide insurance coverage covering contraceptives and abortifacients? That's a very serious religious freedom issue. I'm on the board of the Beckett Fund, which is a legal religious freedom advocacy group, a public interest law firm. And we've won a dozen cases, I think, now in a row in the Supreme Court of the United States, fighting those kinds of issues. So we won the famous Hobby Lobby case, which had to do with trying to force an evangelical family who owns the Hobby Lobby chain of stores to cover abortifacient drugs in their employees' insurance plans. I like the direction of our jurisprudence in this religious freedom area, but we have no guarantee that things will continue to go in the right direction. So we have to keep working hard, keep fighting hard to defend our religious freedom and the religious freedom of others in this domain.
Yeah, I've heard people, because I have been speaking out publicly in a secular newspaper. I'm not always well received as a person of faith and God, and I've kind of mentioned that there is religious persecution that we're experiencing here in America, and I get some responses where people say, no, that's really not happening here. But yet I feel it. And I know that like it only takes, moving a few more notches before we are going to be in a more serious situation. How do we wake up people who don't think it's a serious enough situation to merit our attention? And is there a way to sort of shake people awake and say, look, we're gonna lose this if we don't do something? And I think your call to fidelity is a great step in the right direction in terms of just keeping us focused on the right things. And going back to your dad praying at his bedside out loud for his young sons at the time to hear, and for him to be that hero that raced into the fire without a thought because of who he was connected to. How do we like, the person who sort of is shrugging it off, how do we kind of sort of get their attention?
Well, Roxanne, one thing that I worry about these days, I guess I must be a bit of a worrier because I even worry about the good news. I gave you the good news that we're on a roll in the religious freedom area in the courts. The Beckett Fund alone has won a dozen, as I mentioned, cases in a row, important religious freedom cases. One of our sister organizations, another great religious freedom organization, the Alliance Defending Freedom, has also had a big string of victories in the Supreme Court. So everything's going in the right direction there. But my worry there is that good people who care about religious liberty will come to think, well, the courts will take care of all our problems. So we don't have to be involved as citizens. We can count on the courts to overturn laws and policies that violate our and other people's religious liberty. That's a bad attitude.
Yeah.
The right attitude is we have to win these struggles in the legislatures, in the democratic forums, so that the issues never go to the courts. So we don't have to be relying on the courts to rescue us from bad legislation produced by the democratic process. If we were active citizens, if we're good in that third dimension of fidelity that I'm talking about, fidelity to country and community, if we're active citizens working for the common good and the defense of genuine rights in our communities, we will stop bad legislation so that it doesn't have to be overturned by courts.
Absolutely. And I, as a mother, go back to the home even. So I go back further into the heart of who we are and what matters. I think I just was listening to something this morning about the mother tiger instinct that we have as mothers. And I think that's, when we start to realize how this impinges on our young people, and I think maybe that can rouse us a bit as mothers, as people of families. But yeah, there's a lot at stake. I'm curious, like in the world of academia, how do you? I'm just kind of impressed by your ability to be that bridge. What do you think that is that you're able to do that? Because I don't think everyone could. Right now, it's such a divisive world. And what do you think it is about you, Dr. George, that has been able to get into those waters and kind of keep things calm and thoughtful? Maybe you haven't analyzed yourself enough to answer that question, but I'm curious what you think.
Well, I had the blessing of having really wonderful teachers, both as an undergraduate student and then in law school and in my doctoral program in philosophy. And I really model my own work on the work of my teachers. And what they taught me to do was to treat people with whom I disagree, with whom I have differences of opinion, people who see things differently than the way I see them, with respect. And treating with them with respect means taking their arguments seriously, doing my best to understand their arguments, recognizing what elements of truth there are in their point of view, even if I'm not buying the whole thing. Sometimes there'll be no elements of truth there, at least as I judge it. But sometimes I'll say, well, yeah, there is an element of truth there, even though I'm not buying the whole thing. And above all, I was taught, and I try to put this into practice, to understand my opponent's argument at least as well, if not better, than he understands it. And if I do that and I'm still not persuaded by it, that will mean I must have pretty good reasons for rejecting it. And then my task is to articulate those reasons. So that's what I do. If you find any merit in what I do, it's probably because of that. If there's an argument that's counter to my views on, say, marriage or abortion or whatever it is, it's not because I'm ignorant of the points that are to be made on the other side. It's that I've studied them very, very carefully. And when I've found that I'm not persuaded by them, I have reasons for not being persuaded. And then I articulate those reasons by way of a careful, analytically precise critique of the opposing view. So if you look at my writings on marriage, you'll see that. If you look at my writings on human life issues, abortion, euthanasia, and so forth, you'll find the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant and important tact. And I think that's something we've had to do with our children. At the point where they're adults, to ask questions and try to understand where they're at before you jump in with the mother tiger approach, right? I mean, it's almost like you have to kind of neutralize the situation and just, look at it very objectively on both sides and then find that common ground. Well, Dr. George, before I have to let you go today, we're having an exciting day. We are recording this before June, and we're in May, and we're actually finding out just this very moment that a pope has been called into the square. So we'll have a lot to process in the days ahead. What are you hopeful about, including in terms of the Catholic faith, as we look to the days ahead? We don't even know in this moment exactly everything about the new pope. We'll be finding out more in the weeks and days ahead. But what are your hopes in terms of fidelity as it relates to the church, the Christian church, the Catholic church? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I have a few thoughts. First, I find great grounds for hope in the way the faith is being received and embraced outside of the West. Whatever problems we have in Europe and in other developed countries, including the United States, of course, whatever problems we have here, we're seeing a tremendous outpouring of faith and embracing of the gospel in Africa and in parts of Asia. These are the places where the faith is growing, and in many ways, I look to these places as the future of the church. They are producing many, many vocations, both male and female, the men to the priesthood and as brothers and women as sisters, nuns. And that's, to me, very, very encouraging. And I'm hoping that what we're going to be seeing is a kind of reversal of what was once the way things worked when it came to the mission field. We in the West were the missionaries to Africa and Asia. I think today, Africa and Asian Catholicism is what's going to produce the missionaries to come back to us and re-win Europe and other parts of the developed world to the gospel.
Yes, I think you're right. I interviewed a priest. It's been some years ago now that was in our area, and he had been a Holy Ghost priest. He was from Ireland, down in Africa. Had some really harrowing experiences where he was almost killed at gunpoint. But anyway, I asked him about hope, and he said the vineyard, the God is in the vineyard out there, and so what was happening, he was already noticing that some of the African priests that he had helped convert were up here now in North Dakota, even doing their thing up here, and so his broad viewpoint gave me hope, because he just said that, the Spirit's moving, and so where it seems to be depleting in one area, it's taking up residence in another area, and I think that's what you're describing, and it's just kind of that we kind of have to rest on that trust that even though when it seems like our world is kind of being abandoned by God, and I don't know if you feel that, but every once in a while it feels like that to me. It seems like that, but really he's very much alive, and he's working in the ways that he can among us, and so there is a lot of reason to be hopeful. Dr. George, any other final thoughts on fidelity? And also, how can we find out more about it and celebrate it? We are at this recording in the month of June, so we're full-fledged ahead here. What can people do? I know there's not, like you said, a central place to go, but how can people get involved if they want to?
Well, we do have a website, and I'd love people to go to the website. It's just fidelitymonth.com. It's that simple. Fidelity Month, all run together, fidelitymonth.com, or you can Google search for Fidelity Month, and it'll bring up our website. And our website has our logo. When June comes, please take our logo. It's free. Use it on all your social media accounts. Use it as your identifier or your photograph there, and keep it up for the whole of the month of June. And then on our website, we have a list of suggestions for things that you can do in your church or with your community group or on your own to help promote Fidelity Month. You can fly Fidelity Month flags. You go to the website, it'll show you how to get flags or shirts or other merch, as they call it these days. We don't make any money on any of it. As I say, we don't even have a budget. There's a store that sells Fidelity Month branded merchandise, and that's always a good way to call attention. People will ask you, well, what's that all about? I see Fidelity Month on your hat. What are you talking about? What's Fidelity Month all about? So host an event, get your church involved with an event, encourage your priest or pastor or rabbi or whatever to speak about Fidelity Month, encourage your local political leaders, your mayor, to make a proclamation for Fidelity Month, your state representative or your member of Congress to enter something about Fidelity Month in the legislative record, or to fly the flag at his or her office. There are lots of ways that we can get the word out there about Fidelity Month and get people thinking about the importance, again, of these values that really once were the sources of our unity and strength as Americans, and how we can get them back so that they can once again provide us, despite our many differences of race, ethnicity, culture, religion, history, background, that they can again provide us with the unity that will bind us together, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I love it. I've got my T-shirt. I ordered it yesterday. I saw that on Facebook. So, yeah, I'll be wearing that. And you are a great unifier, and our God also is a great unifier. And I think that's a beautiful trait to have. And I just appreciate your thoughts so much. With that, Dr. George, I'll let you go. And habemus papum, I guess, is the phrase of the day. So, all right. Well, God bless you, and thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. So, does fidelity matter? Dr. George, who on his private Facebook page describes himself as the unwoke and uncancelable banjo-picking hillbilly from West Virginia, living in exile like Joseph in Egypt, seems to think so. Dr. George's stories have stayed with me long after we stopped the recordings. Stories of a father who sacrificed his life for his family, and how the hardships of life can be leavened through commitment to God and one another. As a mother, I was heartened to hear of Dr. George's admiration for his mother, who did such an admirable job of raising her 5, likely very rambunctious at times, boys. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. After hearing more about his life, I can better understand his convictions now. The values instilled in Dr. George as a little boy growing up in a West Virginia mining town have stayed with him and benefited him all these years since. And now he's fighting to preserve them in order to bring our nation back to life. On the Fidelity Month website, you'll find it described as a positive grassroots movement to heal division and restore unity in our country by appealing to what is best and most noble in us through a return to living our lives in fidelity to God, our spouses and families, our communities, and country. That sounds like something we can all get behind. As Dr. George said, fidelity is a word that breaks through all barriers and can be a point of unity for us all. So do check out Dr. George's work if you haven't already. He's a treasure of American thought today, and if you're in the Washington, D.C. area this week, he'll be speaking on Monday, June 9th at the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. More on that can be found on fidelitymonth.com website. Well, in our next episode, we're going to hear from a Lutheran pastor who will answer the question, can we change our gender? Until then, don't lose sight of the light.